So you sent over some news about 23andMe filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and their CEO and co-founder, Wojcicki, stepping down.
Right.
This is huge.
It is. It's a big story in the world of personal genetics and consumer DNA testing, and pretty major development.
Yeah, I mean, 23andMe is a name that I think most people recognize these days. And, you know, when I shared this collection of news reports with you, all from around March 24, 2025, it paints a pretty clear picture of a company in trouble.
Definitely.
So we're going to dive into all that for you today.
Okay.
We're not just going to skim the headlines here.
Right.
We really want to understand the reasons behind this bankruptcy, what it means right now, especially for anyone listening who might be a 23andMe customer.
Absolutely.
You know, what does this mean for your data?
Right.
And what could the future hold for 23andMe?
Yeah.
It's pretty uncertain right now.
It is a very uncertain time.
So let's start with the why. What were the key reasons that led to this bankruptcy filing?
Well, there are a number of factors that the news reports point to.
Yeah.
I think a central one, though, is that despite 23andMe's high profile, you know, they had a peak valuation at around $6 billion after they went public in 2021.
Right.
They have never actually turned a profit.
Wow.
It's really striking.
$6 billion valuation, and they've never made money.
It's a big question mark, right?
Yeah. What was the core difficulty?
Well,
why couldn't they become profitable?
There seems to have been a fundamental challenge with their core business model.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Their initial success was really built on selling those DNA testing kits, which for most people is a one-time purchase.
Right.
Lily Jamali at BBC News put it this way.
Okay.
Quote, customers did not have much to return for once they had paid for a DNA report, and an effort to launch a subscription service proved unsuccessful.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I think that really gets to the heart of it.
Yeah.
How do you keep customers engaged and paying after they've gotten those initial results? And their attempt at a subscription model just didn't seem to gain traction.
It makes sense. I mean, you get your ancestry information, maybe some health predispositions, and then what?
Right.
You know, it's not like a streaming service with new content all the time.
Exactly. And it really highlights a core challenge for these companies in this direct-to-consumer genomics space. Like, how do you maintain engagement and offer ongoing value beyond that initial curiosity-driven test?
Yeah, and maybe the health insights weren't personalized enough or actionable enough to warrant a recurring fee.
Exactly.
But they also, I mean, I remember that they made this big push into drug development.
They did.
You know, using all the genetic data that they had. Right.
They wanted to leverage that huge database of genetic information to identify potential drug targets and develop new therapies. You know, that was intended to be a major revenue stream for them.
Right.
But according to the reports, those efforts faltered.
Yeah.
They actually ended up shutting down their entire therapeutics division.
Wow.
In November of 2024.
So that's two major things that didn't work out.
Right.
You know, subscription model failed. Drug development failed.
Yep.
That's a problem.
That's a big problem, and I think it speaks to this larger issue of sustainability for businesses in this space.
But it wasn't just the business model.
Right.
There was also some internal issues.
Yes, and this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Last summer, all 7 of 23andMe's independent directors resigned from the board.
All 7?
All 7.
Wow.
Now, the report suggests that this was due to disagreements with Wojcicki's strategic direction for the company and her repeated attempts to take the company private.
So there was conflict, essentially.
Yeah, there seems to have been a real clash of visions about the future of the company.
And she had made multiple offers to take it private.
She did.
But they were rejected.
They were consistently rejected by a special board committee.
Okay.
Most recently, in early March of this year, 2025.
That's a huge red flag.
It is. When you see that kind of mass exodus from the board, it almost always signals some pretty deep-seated problems.
Yeah.
You know, conflicting visions at the highest levels.
So it sounds like there was a fundamental disagreement about where 23andMe was headed.
Right.
And on top of all of that, they were implementing these pretty significant cost-cutting measures, too.
They had to.
Yeah.
In November 2024, they announced they were reducing their workforce by about 40%.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
It was about 200 employees lost their jobs.
Yeah.
It was a clear attempt to, reduce those operating expenses and conserve cash.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at their stock price, since their IPO, it tells a pretty dramatic story.
Of decline.
Yeah, by the time they announced the bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
their market cap had fallen to around $25 million.
It's crazy.
That's a massive drop from that $6 billion valuation.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge, huge decline.
It is.
So essentially what we have is a confluence of factors.
Yes.
A business model that couldn't generate repeat revenue,
Mm-hmm.
a failed attempt to pivot into drug development,
Right.
serious internal conflicts at the leadership level,
Yeah.
and major financial pressure.
All of those things combined, I think, really created this perfect storm.
Yeah, and it led to this bankruptcy filing.
Yeah.
So now that they've actually officially filed for Chapter 11,
Right.
what's the immediate impact?
Okay, so immediately,
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that 23andMe is saying that they plan to continue operating
Okay.
business as usual throughout this sale process.
So you could theoretically still order a DNA kit
You could.
or log into your account.
Yeah, they've secured $35 million in what's called debtor-in-possession financing.
Debtor-in-possession.
Yeah, it's essentially a loan that allows them to keep operating
Okay.
while they try to reorganize their finances.
I see.
So this financing should allow them to cover their immediate expenses
Mm-hmm.
and maintain their services for the time being.
Okay. But what about leadership?
Right.
Anne Wojcicki is no longer the CEO.
That's correct. She resigned with immediate effect,
Okay.
although she will remain on the board of directors.
Interesting.
Yeah, the company's current finance chief,
Okay.
Joe Savage,
Mm-hmm.
has been appointed interim CEO.
So he's taking over.
He is, for now.
Okay.
Wojcicki did release a statement on X,
Mm-hmm.
taking responsibility for the challenges,
Right.
but also expressing her belief in the company's future potential.
Okay.
Interestingly, she also indicated that she intends to bid.
She wants to buy the company back.
Yes, she wants to be an independent bidder
Yeah.
to acquire the company.
Wow. That's a plot twist.
It's a very interesting development.
So what's the point of the Chapter 11 then?
Right. Well, it seems that the goal here is to sell off the company's assets.
Okay.
The plan is to sell substantially all of its assets
Okay.
through a reorganization plan
Mm-hmm.
that will be approved by the bankruptcy court.
I see.
The board chair, Mark Jensen,
Okay.
said that this court-supervised sale process is the best path forward
Mm-hmm.
to maximize the value of the business
Okay.
and also to help them reduce costs and resolve their liabilities.
So essentially it's like a formal auction of the company.
Right.
Overseen by the court.
Exactly. And Anna Wojcicki wants to be one of the bidders.
Yeah.
And, Mark Jensen's perspective is that this is the most effective way
Mm-hmm.
to find a buyer
Right.
who will give them the best value and to sort out their financial obligations.
Yeah, and this all leads to the biggest concern for many people.
Yeah.
What happens to their data? I mean,
None.
this is incredibly sensitive information.
It is.
We're talking about our genetic code.
Yeah, our DNA.
This doesn't get much more personal than that.
It really doesn't. And
Yeah.
the news reports do address this directly.
Okay.
23andMe's official position is that there will be no changes
Yeah.
to the way they store, manage, or protect customer data
Okay.
during this bankruptcy period.
Okay.
They also emphasize that data privacy will be a key consideration
Mm-hmm.
in any potential transaction.
Right, so if they're sold,
Yeah, if a new owner comes in.
the data's privacy will be part of the deal.
Exactly. Mark Jensen also made a public statement
Okay.
about their commitment to safeguarding customer data
Mm-hmm.
and ensuring transparency in how it's managed.
Okay, but are there reasons to be concerned
Well,
despite those assurances?
yes, there are some significant reasons for concern. Notably, the California Attorney General,
Right.
Rob Bonta,
Mm-hmm.
issued a consumer alert just days before the bankruptcy filing.
Really?
Yes, and he advised customers to consider deleting their data
Wow.
from 23andMe due to the company's reported financial distress.
That's a pretty serious warning.
It's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, coming from the Attorney General,
Right.
why would he do that?
Well, I think the concern stems from the uncertainty
Mhm.
of bankruptcy proceedings.
Yeah,
While 23andMe might currently intend to protect that data,
right.
a new owner might have different priorities.
That's true.
And in bankruptcy, the main goal is to satisfy creditors.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, data is often seen as a valuable asset.
It's due.
It can be sold off.
Yeah, it's almost like our genetic information
Yeah.
is just another commodity to be liquidated.
It's a really unsettling thought, and Professor Carissa Valise,
I know.
who wrote the book Privacy is Power,
Mm-hmm.
offers a crucial perspective on this.
Okay.
She basically says If you gave your data to 23andMe, you also gave the genetic data of your family. Yeah. Your parents, your siblings, your children.
Yeah, your whole family tree, essentially.
Yeah, even distant relatives who didn't consent.
Right.
So it's not just about you.
Right.
It's about your entire genetic lineage.
Yeah. So the implications are much broader.
They are. And it's easy to overlook that.
Absolutely.
The reports also touch on some of the international legal stuff.
Right.
For example, in the UK, DNA is classified as special category data.
Okay.
Which means it has stronger legal protections if a company goes insolvent.
Okay.
And they mentioned the case of Atlas Biomed.
Oh, right.
Another DNA testing company that faced financial difficulties.
Yeah.
And it raised questions about what happens to the data in those situations.
Right.
So the legal frameworks around genetic data and bankruptcy, they can vary from country to country.
So there's another layer of complexity.
There is.
Especially for international users.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to clarify, though, what does special category data mean?
Oh, yeah. It basically means it's personal information that's considered very sensitive and could cause a lot of harm if it's mishandled.
So they have stricter rules around it.
Yeah.
So even though 23andMe is saying they're committed to data security, there are valid reasons to be concerned.
Yeah, and regulators and experts are saying so publicly.
Yeah, so I guess the responsibility falls on individuals to think about what this means for their data.
To really think about the implications.
So let's take a step back and look at the big picture. Yeah. 23andMe was a really popular company for a time. The reports mention endorsements from Oprah Winfrey, Eva Longoria, Snoop Dogg.
Huge names.
Yeah, it doesn't get much bigger than that.
It was as mainstream as you could get.
Yeah. When do you think things started to go wrong?
That's a great question.
After that initial success.
You know, I think a lot of that early popularity was driven by novelty. The idea of easily accessible personal genetic information. You know, exploring your ancestry, getting potential health insights.
Yeah.
That was really compelling. But
then what?
Right. And as we talked about, I think their biggest challenge was figuring out what comes next.
Right.
How do you create a sustainable business model beyond that initial report?
And then there was the data breach.
Right, in 2023.
Nearly 7 million customers had their information exposed.
And while the company says no raw DNA data was compromised, it definitely damaged trust and probably increased their security costs.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with the internal struggles and the failure of the drug development efforts.
Yeah.
And it really seems like it created a downward spiral.
Yeah, a negative feedback loop.
Exactly.
And when those independent directors resigned, that was a clear sign that something was deeply wrong.
It was a huge signal.
At the leadership level.
Yeah, a lack of confidence in the direction of the company.
So it wasn't just one single thing.
Right.
It was a whole bunch of factors.
It was a perfect storm that ultimately led to this bankruptcy.
And it's a real cautionary tale.
I think so.
About building a business around sensitive personal data in such a rapidly changing market. It's a tough space to be in.
So to sum it all up, for you, the listener, 23andMe's bankruptcy is not some random event.
Right.
It's the result of these fundamental issues with their business model.
Yeah.
And the challenges of getting people to come back after that initial DNA test. And then you add in those unsuccessful attempts to diversify.
Right.
The conflicts at the top.
Yeah, the leadership struggles.
And the fallout from that huge data breach.
Huge data breach.
Yeah.
And that's how we got here.
And now they're selling off their assets.
Right.
Which creates a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, not just for the company.
Right.
But for all that data they hold.
That's the big question.
Yeah, and while they're saying they're committed to protecting customer data.
They are.
During this transition. We have to consider the concerns of the California Attorney General and privacy experts like Professor Veliz.
Right.
You know, this is really sensitive stuff.
It is.
And it's not just about you. It's about your biological relatives, too.
Your entire family.
Yeah.
Genetically.
So this whole situation raises some really profound questions.
Definitely.
You know, about data ownership, especially when it comes to something as personal as our genetic code.
Yeah.
And what happens to it when a company like this goes bankrupt? Right.
What are the rights of individuals when their data is potentially being transferred as part of a sale?
Yeah. And it makes you think about the future. You know, personal data is only becoming more valuable. And companies are going to face all sorts of challenges. Yeah. You know, successes and failures.
It's unpredictable.
So where does that leave our privacy?
It's a big question. And I don't think there are easy answers.
Yeah. It's something for all of us to keep thinking about.
Definitely something to ponder.